Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hi there, welcome back.
So, yeah, we're looking at a map, guys. We're looking at a map. I found this very, very interesting. While everybody agrees pretty much, not everybody, but the vast majority of the public out there agrees on stimulus checks. What they found was doing a survey, they found that 1/3 of people agreed maybe it's time to split the country up into different sections.
Well, I think that that would be a good idea because if it were split up in different sections, smaller sections, it would give less control to the bigger entities.
Yeah, break it down in order to redo things in a different way. The other thing too is just, I mean, there's, as we've said so many times, and it's so obvious. There's really no agreement. So, if you're surveying people in, say, places like Oklahoma, Arkansas, the Dakotas, and then you're going to ask a question to people in, say, California or New York. It's going to be just completely different what you get as far as answers. So, there's not going to be agreement there.
No, there's most definitely not.
And we saw that with, you guys, working on people in different areas. Even though you're all part of this family, boy, the mindset from one section of the country to another can be radically different.
Well, yeah, I mean, people are raised and are facing different things too, so it does form our opinions depending on our situation.
So this is interesting. And what will things look like in 2024? That's the big question. 2024, what's it going to look like? Realize, so often we look at the world and we think, oh my God, it can't go on like this. But, the reality is, it still has 7.7, 7.8 billion people at this point. Even with all the disasters we've been seeing, all the floods, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, when you put those numbers together as a percentage of the population, they've affected a good deal of the population, but the population goes on.
It does, yep, it continues.
So it can go on for a much longer time when you look at it. And yet there is most definitely a slow, steady build up. And in some cases, a not so slow, but definitely steady and building momentum build up. And many of the things that we're seeing, especially like the floods, remember we were talking about the floods in Kentucky, looking at the house down Dabu Street.
I know, I mean, that would be crazy to look out your window and see something like that, and he did.
And we were watching Roots and Refuge last night, I think, and they're in Arkansas, and still doing and dealing with what happened with that huge ice storm and that that polar blast, which was unlike anything they've ever experienced in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana. That area was just so crazy, and it could happen again, obviously. But thankfully, she was saying how so many of the plants that looked really like they were not going to make it in the greenhouse bounced back.
Yeah.
So that's good. And then yesterday it was 60 degrees there. So, this craziness that we see across the globe is amplifying. But, the end may not be nigh.
No, it might not be. We got a lot of stuff to go forward with.
Most definitely. And so, again, I for one have always felt that this was going to happen going back to when I was about 12. As I got the feeling and the message that the U.S. was going to end up breaking up into pieces. And now you have, talk of it, and you have 1/3 of the country in support of it. Now, Pope Francis is warning mankind is facing a second great flood caused by global warming. He's made, and other popes have made these type of speeches in the past. And of course, he's blaming it on global warming, man-made, carbon emissions, all that stuff. We understand that. And we understand, and you guys understand the bigger picture here with these powers that be. We are facing a deluge. We're seeing it. Everybody we talk to, wicked storms, massive flooding, unless you're in the desert.
I know, you got a lot. And then if you're in the desert, you might have to worry about water.
Yeah, then we got to worry about, the fires that will barbecue you.
I know, that's terrible, but it's true.
Exactly. So we see the locust plague is going on and turns the sky black as swarms ravage the Middle East. Not just the Middle East, they've been all over, going out throughout Asia. We saw them in South America, heading up towards North America, Africa as well. It truly is quote unquote biblical. Most definitely what we're seeing going on. And with all the food issues, this is a legitimate question. Should foreign companies own Missouri farmland? There's some great homesteaders in Missouri. Missouri is a great state for homesteading and food production. And they also say lawmakers could put a stop to it. And we were talking about BG buying up, 250,000 acres. What's he going to do with that? That's the big question. Is it going to just lie there and not be used? Could be. Is it just to protect the land for the future? Is it to drive up prices? What's really going on here? And then we see also, as this is saying, there's a lot of foreign companies, and some foreign companies are the state, because the state and the companies are one. So then you have certain entities buying up farmland, and the question is, we know food prices are going up. We know there's going to be scarcity on certain items. How should we allow it?
Well, we know that BG is not a dumb businessman. He knows what he's doing and he knows how to take control of things. So watching what he does, I think, is really important for making predictions on what's going to happen in the future.
And when you realize a certain company, MS, has access to emails and not everybody, but the vast majority of people's computers, it's easy to be making good predictions, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it is. And also, not just access to computers, but certain treatments give access to the body.
Oh, that's true too. And there's so much information that could be accessed. Have you noticed gas prices getting high? Yeah, California is over $4 a gallon again. And we had talked about this. Again, the ice storm had a major impact. And if I had always thought that one of the number one targets in the whole country, as far as if there ever was to be a global conflagration, and say there was the fine dining ware country along with other countries, what city would they want to really hit? And Houston comes to mind, because Houston is an economic powerhouse. It's very diverse. It has a military base. It has a energy sector that's huge as well. And so, the oil platforms and everything would be something that could be targeted. Again, disruptions to infrastructure. As we see, some cities are starting to ban new gas stations, and they're talking about California there, getting ready for all electric vehicles.
Right. There's going to be some kind of a turnover, and might get a little bit bumpy.
Oh, yeah. There's going to be a major bumpy turnover. We could see that. There's so much going on, and we have 30-year mortgages now. They're kind of going upwards a little bit. And again, 3%, coming back to the day when I first bought my first house, it was like 8.5%. That's low. That's really low. But they have rebounded sharply since 2 weeks, with the 30-year Treasury yield spiking above 2.25% on Thursday. And we talked about the applications for new mortgages dropping. And, again, I have so many different alerts coming in from all over the country as we've looked at, properties all over the country. And now everything I'll tell you, Texas and Louisiana, the prices are dropping like a rock right now. And a lot of it's probably due to houses that have been damage from the storm, and the realization, oh my God, this is broke, that's broke now, leaks here and there. So, a lot of properties are going on fireside sales.
Well, right. And they were built in an area where people didn't think that they would have to worry about these crazy ice storms. So they didn't take into account a lot of things. And therefore, when the weather does come in, it just causes that much more damage.
Most definitely. And I was talking to David Devine, DAP 2030, a couple of months ago. We were talking, like right at the beginning of the year, when do you think the great housing crash is coming? I asked him, and I told him, I said, my feel was April to June. And then he came back with more specific. He was thinking April 7th through like 14th. But then we talked, and then it felt like things might have gotten pushed off. But now, after the big ice storm in polar blast, that could be big enough to trigger it, because that's such a huge section of the country. Texas is our second biggest state, and it's growing super fast, or was growing super fast.
Yeah, and it was really able to stand on its own 2 feet, but now it's kind of wobbly.
Yeah, it's all pushing towards that great reset. And meanwhile, we have life expectancy in the U.S. saw its biggest drop since World War II, a full year. 77.8 years went down to 78.8. Sorry, backwards. 78.8 in 2019 to 77.8 in 2020. So it's the lowest level since 2006. We talked about, the sperm counts being down 60% in industrialized nations, the first world, Europeans and us and Japan. You could see where this is going. You could see where the trend is going. And so they attribute it to a lot of things, and they're waiting to see how next year looks, what the full impact of, the situation that we have been in. So they say it's in large part due to increased drug overdose deaths, unhealthy lifestyles, and suicides. And, I'm looking at this. There were so many people locked in, depressed, lost their businesses, lost their livelihoods, lost their homes. Of course, suicide rates are continuing to rise. And we don't hear anything about that, really.
No, we don't. We don't hear enough about it when it's really something that should be on the front and center, and people learning to understand themselves, learning to understand their own emotions and how they react. And if you understand yourself well enough, you can figure out how to make your life better.
Most definitely, most definitely. And it does vary place to place, because there are some places, like in Oklahoma, for instance, certain things are just suggestions.
Right, they are. Certain things are just suggestions. So that's another thing to keep in mind, Everything's just different.
Yeah, state by state, very, very different. We have most definitely felt that. We've been through certain states and you can't find anything open, nothing,
Right.
absolutely nothing. And then you go into some other areas and life is almost normal. So very interesting. And horny toads are disappearing. Yes, that's a Texas horned lizard, which we had a lot of those on the property in Nevada. It was just full of these little cute guys. They're adorable. But this is, again, certain species go extinct in these times, and then all new ones develop, and we've been talking about that.
I know. So what do we got going on here? Some evolution.
Yes. And, at the same time, the system is so poisonous and toxic to everything, and we need more people waking up. Now, desperation comes in. Think about this now. To add on to everything, if the gas and oil prices end up rising up, so California, for instance, is closing in on $5 per gallon. Most of the country's over three something. Add to that the already economic strain by what the lockdown has done, and so many people losing their jobs or getting less hours. There's just one thing on top of another. Then people will be like, they'll be ready for any relief. So if the powers that be are talking a new pipeline, if they're talking new fracking, that's when people just sort of nod their head and say, whatever, I just need to pay my bills. I can't pay, we talked about the crazy electric bills. It causes desperation, so that then people will just say, whatever, I just can't deal with this.
Well, yeah, they probably have hungry children and everything, so you can't blame them.
No, you definitely can't blame them. But at the same time, we have to realize that the system is the thing that's ultimately causing the illness on the planet. The system creates the disease, and then we just keep putting Band-Aids on it, so to speak.
I know we do, so that's why we got to start, looking at our own lives, seeing where can I take control over my own life, even if it's just the smallest thing, drinking more water, taking back your health. That's the number one thing I think we can start with.
And as we said, with life expectancy, in the U.S. declining, and some other countries as well. I think we were reporting on Italy. There was another country over there, smaller country, same thing. Numbers came out, I think it was even greater. I forget if it was Romania or I forget which one it was now. But we're starting to see it consistency. We're seeing much lower birth rates and life expectancy declining in a time when we shouldn't have that at all. I mean, perhaps the birth rates, as people change their lifestyles and what they want in life, a lot less people are getting married. A lot of people are waiting much, much longer to get married. Many times in the old days, you had kids to work the farm. You had kids to help you with everything. It's not like that anymore, and as we go forward, there's going to be more and more automation, and this whole thing that we've just gone through has sped up the automation. Perhaps we'll see all automated police and military at some point in time, completely automated. Maybe there'll be no humans there, just behind the screens moving the drones.
Yeah, well, I did see a headline about that anyway, about those DARPA pups, going around and doing stuff already.
Yeah, I mean, that's all coming. Of course, when you go through the drive-in at, if you do eat McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, all that stuff, and you're going to order, you might not see a person, period. The whole thing could be completely automated. So we don't need to, for the most part, most people don't need to have a bunch of kids to, work things. Now, when we look at our homesteaders, like the Hollers and so many of them, they all have 5 kids. They have 5 kids to help them to work things. This planet, it's kind of like, there was a sci-fi movie, and you guys will remember it. I'm sure somebody out there will, where the future, there's 2 completely different classes and even races of humans. The humans split into 2 divergent paths, where there's this one smaller group that's living in all the, living with the high tech, and everybody else is just kind of like groveling and just barely surviving. We've seen this over and over and over, and I'm thinking about like an old one from the 70s, but yeah, I mean, we could echo the Hunger Games and other things as well with the way things are going. It's pretty obvious, we could see that, but I still feel like really we need to return to the land, so to speak, and recognize that, without Mother Nature, there's no life on this planet. So as we keep destroying everything and poisoning and polluting, and, it's not being a tree hugger, it's just recognizing, that this system is absolutely destructive, and it obviously can't go on. And they'll even tell you it can't go on, like you got 20 years left, before ecological disaster and ecological Armageddon. Yet, what do? They're just always, creating more toxicities for the environment, and more species are getting wiped out.
And it's really, really sad, and this is where we really need to look inside and look within and work on healing yourself. Once you heal yourself, then you're in a far better position to start working on the planet.
Yes, and that's why, again, sometimes breaking things up into smaller components can be good, can be helpful, and, can eventually, like, just think about it, if all the power was at the local level, town level, not even states, that would be almost impossible to control.
Yeah.
It really would be. As, the drive has been towards more and more governance, just the opposite is really needed.
That's right, definitely.
Thank you guys for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. Make sure you are subscribed and have the bell clicked for notifications. If you need to make an appointment, reach us at evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com or EEARTS@protonmail.com, and Cindy's going to give us a ding. So may all you guys be part of the healing of the world that is so sorely needed, and may each one of you shine a very bright light out there to guide others.
God bless and namaste.
God bless. Namaste.